Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you all had a good Christmas if you celebrate it, or a good holiday if you celebrate something else. Mine was pretty good. I actually got a G Pro X Superlight. It's something I actually really wanted but didn't expect to get, and I've been trying it out for the last few days. And it's crazy how much of a difference the lightweight makes. I was using a G502, I believe is what it's called, the hyperspeed wireless version. And the change in weight is actually very significant. But I hope you all got something good for your holiday. If there's something special, leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. I also hope you all had a great New Year. I'm recording this on New Year's Eve. I doubt I'll get it out in time before New Year's Eve, so Happy New Year to all of you. Looking forward to a great 2022. Anyway, it's been a while since I talked about Battlefield 2042 on the channel. With the new year upon us, I thought I would take this opportunity to talk about it in the state of the game right now before DICE comes back from their break. So let's start off with some of the good things, and from a larger scale perspective, it's a lot of fun right now. I know I have said that about the beta and at the initial launch that it was fun, but it is in a pretty fun place right now, minus a few of the things that we'll talk about later. But overall, I would say that if you're wondering at this juncture if the game is fun, I think it is. But let's talk a little bit more specifically about some of the things I'm enjoying right now about Battlefield 2042. So as you might be aware, if you play the game, there are several modes now that are available through Portal, which I really enjoy. TDM is super fun. There's a smaller scale team deathmatch mode available in Battlefield Portal. It plays on a variety of maps, smaller versions of some of the 2042 maps, some of the older TDM maps from other games. The only one I really dislike is Battle of the Bulge from 1942. It just feels really campy. People are just on the rooftops all the time. Obviously, it wasn't designed with specialists like McKay in mind. Rush is a lot of fun. It's been on the playlist for a while, and it's on the playlist through the end of the holidays, but I really hope it stays permanently. Rush has been a staple of Battlefield for a long time prior to Breakthrough coming in, and it has actually always been my favorite mode. In BF3 and BF4, I played it religiously and actually very rarely played Conquest, so I really hope to see Rush stick around. We also have 64-player Conquest and Breakthrough, and that's been a lot of fun. Personally, I do think Conquest can be at its best in 128-player style in 2042 on the 2042 maps, but Breakthrough especially suffers at that larger player count. It becomes too chaotic, becomes too easy to die from a million different sightlines, and I actually really like 64-player Breakthrough, having a ton of fun with it. The game also feels much better to play than it did at launch and in the beta. If you're aware, if you've seen a lot of other YouTube videos or seen mine on the topic, I was getting terrible performance, something in the range of like 80 FPS on Ultra at 1440p on a 3090, which is unacceptable. The game doesn't look good enough to run at that low of a frame rate, and I'm running about the best hardware you can, so only getting that kind of FPS sucks. But in these smaller modes, I'm definitely getting about 110, 120 and over, sometimes upwards of 140. I am still playing at Ultra on 1440p, and I do feel like they've made some tweaks to make the game perform a little bit better. Even in the all-out warfare 128-player modes, it just feels a touch smoother and more responsive than it did at launch. We also have weekly missions now, and those are great for cosmetics, but they're also something to do, and they vary a lot. They can encourage players to use different specialists, different gadgets, and all of that. I know for me, I sometimes have a tendency to play a medic all the time, especially in this game. I just play Falc almost 100% of the time. I always have that tendency, and this is just something that gives me a reason to mix it up a bit more. And for other players that like to complete challenges, I think this is a great addition. I would actually like to see this expanded on to maybe include several weekly missions that include a variety of rewards, whether it's weapon skins, charms, all of that. We also have several different guns that are meta or very viable right now. Some of the ones that come to mind are the MP9 submachine gun, the PKP, AK-24, the M5, the DXR. Even some of the shotguns are great if you use them properly. Vehicle balance is also in a relatively good place. The Bolt and the Hovercraft are obviously both terribly overpowered for a while, and there have been several nerfs to bring those down to the right level. And for me, as an infantry player, like I said, mostly a combat medic or flanking style, I would say that infantry versus vehicle balance feels pretty good at the moment. There could probably be some buffs to vehicles again. They do sometimes feel like they're not as good as they should be, but I'm not the best resource for this kind of thing. Overall though, I would say it doesn't feel too far skewed one way or the other. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some of the things that need to change, whether it's short-term or long-term, that I think would really be good for the health of the game. Battlefield does have a longer life cycle than something like Call of Duty, so there are a lot of changes that can be made, and hopefully by the end of its life cycle, it can be really great. Obviously, it would have been preferable for it to be completed and really great at launch, but here we are. So to start off with, I think one of the simplest and most straightforward things that we need in the game right now is UI customization. I'm mostly referring to opacity and resizing options. It is wild to me that I still can't resize the minimap. It's always way too small in Battlefield. It needs to be bigger. I typically have it at about 130%, and it being so small in the bottom left is annoying. I need to see as much information as possible, especially with the larger scale of 2042. I'd also love to adjust the opacity of HUD icons. I've mentioned this time and time again. There are way too many HUD icons in this game. I'd love to make them completely invisible when I aim down the sight, and even just less visible in general. I don't need them being so bright in the middle of my screen all the time. I often lose opponents in the HUD icons when I'm in a fight. We also just need some content in the game immediately. We had only 7 maps at launch, only 22 guns. I believe those are the correct numbers. And we are in a bit of a content drought, and it feels like there's not much to play for other than just having fun. But with so many games out right now, it can be hard to convince myself to keep playing 2042 when there's just not that much content. I think the easiest and quickest way to get some of this content would just be leaning on the things that we have in Portal. I think at least the Battlefield 3 and Bad Company 2 guns would still be in use in the year 2042 to some degree, so I'd love to see those come over with some tweaks to bring them up to balance, give them more attachments, and have them fit the Plus system. Even a lot of maps in Portal right now were designed for 64-player play, and we have that right now in All Out Warfare, so I think we could bring a lot of those maps over. They're really well designed, they flow really well. It could almost just be a copy and paste and just making things available in the All Out Warfare mode. It is depressing because you can't get that much XP through Portal, and it would be nice to just be able to play those maps and with those weapons, but in All Out Warfare and get full XP. And generally, with this content and new content coming in the future, we just need more thought and detail. A lot of the maps in 2042 don't feel like there was that much thought put into them in the traditional Battlefield style. There are a lot of reasons for this. If you don't know, 2042 is thought to have initially been a battle royale. And then they switched things up late in the game, and only in like November of 2020 did they start making it a traditional Battlefield game. So the Hazard Zone game mode is kind of the skeleton of what the original intended game mode was supposed to be for this game. The 128 player scale, these large maps with an open map design without that much cover, they all feel like remnants of that battle royale. Obviously, BRs typically have power positions and a lot of open space between them to punish people who aren't positioning well, and that feels very prevalent in the launch maps. But I'd like to see newer maps not have this going on since we are in a traditional Battlefield game. Next, I think we desperately need a server browser. As you all might know, I've mentioned this time and time again in videos, I fucking hate being put into games that are in progress. It annoys me so much. And without a server browser, there's no way that I can circumvent being put into a game in progress. And since 2042 is copying Call of Duty and lobbies disband after every match, I feel like I'm being put into a match in progress almost every game. It's so annoying. At the very least with the server browser, you could join a game, and if it's in progress, even if you're losing, it doesn't really matter. As long as you get through that game, you will now be at the beginning of every subsequent game. That's just not here. So a server browser would be nice. It would also be super nice if I just want to play a specific map, I could just find a game that's running on that map and just join it. To go back to some of these maps as well, we definitely need some tweaks to the existing maps to get rid of the issues that we have with lack of cover. A lot of cover needs to be added to these open spaces. A lot of these areas can be used for some good infantry combat or infantry versus vehicle combat, and right now they just have no cover, so it's just easy pickings for snipers or people camping with LMGs or the vehicles to just decimate infantry trying to run across these open areas from point to point in something like Conquest. We just need more cover, and it would help a lot with spawning without cover in game modes like Breakthrough and Rush. There are so many times where I spawn on a 2042 map specifically in a mode like Breakthrough and Rush and just die instantly because there's no cover to protect me from people that are looking into my spawn. It could also help add character to the maps. A lot of the 2042 maps just don't have that much character or personality to them, but I'll elaborate a little bit more on that in a minute. You could also use stat tracking. It blows my mind that this just isn't in the game. I'd love to see overall win-loss ratios as well as ratios broken down by mode, kill-death ratios overall, as well as broken down by guns, and going off of that, just detailed gun stats, including the KD, accuracy, and a breakdown of shots, like where you hit them. Same kind of detail for vehicle statistics, whether it's as a passenger and as a driver, and just statistics relevant to each class. And speaking of classes, I think we need a minor rework to specialists. This would obviously be a larger scale, long-term kind of wish, but I think it's necessary, and I'll kind of go over what I think could be done. I was pretty vocal about being against specialists from the beginning, but now that I've played the game a lot, I think they actually have a bit of potential, and they're not as bad as I thought they were. Though I still don't love them, I think they can fit into a Battlefield game. So my proposal would be to break the specialists down into classes, each with their own specialty, within that class. So to give a few examples, for me as a medic, I have kind of thought about this one a little more. Falk is a combat medic to me, and she could have her Surette pistol. She can heal allies at range, they heal super fast, but only one can be healed at a time. Her self-heal animation I think would also need to be sped up. So essentially we're already using Falk almost entirely as she exists. Angel would be the other type of medic, and he'd be a backline kind of defensive medic. He would throw down the traditional health bag, and anyone who's near the health bag would get healed, but it would be a slower rate than the Surette pistol heals. Both specialists would only have access to ARs or SMGs for their primary weapons, and for their grenades they can only use smokes or frags. And that's it. They would both revive allies significantly faster than the traditional revive time for squad revives, and that's kind of how you would have two specialists occupy different roles within a class, and I think that's really cool. You could even take this logic and apply it to other classes. Sundance can be an aggressive flanking assault player, while Dozer is a frontline slow advancing assault player. For Recon, McKay could be an aggressive sniper, while Casper sits further back. Boris and Irish could both be support players with LMGs and DMRs, specializing in ammo and entrenching positions with their turrets and barricades. Finally, we have Rao and Paik, who could be the engineers of this game, but I think they would need some more concentrated reworks. I don't think either of their abilities really suits Battlefield at all, and I don't think they're really healthy for the game. So I think we need to go back to square one. Ideally, the engineers would be the ones that are vehicle focused, whether it's repairing vehicles or dispatching vehicles, though that does overlap a little bit with the support players, so maybe there would need to be more thought about that. But this is just super early thoughts, and I think it would be cool to sort of have specialists within classes that can only choose from a little bit of guns. I understand players want more freedom about the weapon that they choose, because sometimes maybe a meta AR shows up and then everyone plays the class that can use the AR. So I understand wanting a little more freedom, so maybe allow access to 2 different types of guns, or maybe everyone can use an AR plus another type of gun. So SMGs for medics, snipers for recon, LMGs for support, and for engineers maybe it's the DMRs. I don't know, something like that. We would also get rid of what I think are toxic gadgets like the armor plates. Really no place in the game. I hate them. And finally, this is a more vague type of thing, but I think the game needs a lot more focus on personality, world building, and immersion. If you go back and play something like Battlefield 1, the cinematic immersion in that game is intense. It feels incredible to play. Even the older ones like BF3 and BF4, while not quite to the level of BF1 in this regard, have this immersive, just really cinematic feeling to them that 2042 lacks. Even Battlefield 5, which is kind of considered one of the weakest battlefields prior to 2042, their maps have tons of immersion in them. If you play something like Iwo Jima, it looks and feels great, and I think 2042 could use that. And there aren't that many things that they need to do to even add this to the existing maps. Urban areas could have more run-down, war-torn structures. Some of these buildings don't need to be so pristine. They could have broken windows, some of them could be half blown up or just have some of it missing. They could have more ads and billboards and bus stops, broken down cars and plants growing in the cracks on the sidewalks. That would be really cool. Desert areas like the ones found on Hourglass can have things like abandoned street vendor stalls. And a lot of these maps too could use just ambient transportation. So I love how some of the maps have tuk-tuks that you could drive, but I'm thinking even more things like the sedans should be drivable, maybe some dirt bikes depending on the map. That could also be a way to add some personality to these maps. And for some of the interiors, like say the village areas on Hourglass, there needs to be more inside to give them some personality. Thinking things like rundown furniture, broken electronics, maybe some abandoned toys or posters on the walls. These are things that can just help push the world as it is and give players a sense of story and immersion without having to have the campaign, since we don't have that in this game. And finally, what we do have as far as a story in 2042, if you've paid attention to the lore, I don't really, but if you do, it's a very war-torn, dark, dystopian future. But we have these Overwatch, Apex-style, ridiculous voice lines at the end of the game. I hate them. I hate them so much, like everyone else does. We need to get rid of these voice lines, these poses, and these expressions from the specialists, and replace them with something more serious and somber that fit the world that we're in. This is something quick. I don't think it would be that time-consuming to bring voice actors back in to re-record a few lines for this. And then it would just be reanimating some poses, just something really simple. You don't even need all of them to be done. I think Irish is generally okay. I think Falk is generally okay. But that does it for me. I'd love to hear from all of you. Let me know in the comments below if you're still playing 2042 or if you have it all. I'd love to have a conversation about it. What are you thinking? How are you feeling about it? If you enjoy the video, feel free to drop a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike so I know I need to change something. Subscribe if you're new. We'll have more Halo ranked content, more Warzone content, as well as more Battlefield 2042 coming up in the future, and maybe something else if I come across it. I'd like to thank you all for watching. See you in the next video.
They're retreating. Excellent work, Notepats. We'll remember this day.